Hey everybody, and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into Apex Trader Funding. This is a prop firm that I get a lot of questions about. So we're going to go into this and kind of figure out the best way to utilize it to its fullest extent. And before we dive into this, I have to preface the video with this is for educational purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. Trading comes with a large amount of risk, and you are accepting that risk anytime you go into the market and trade. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about Apex. And there's a lot to unpack here, so bear with me. If you need to speed my voice up, you can. There's a little settings button at the bottom. Go ahead and 2x my voice if you need to. Okay, so when we come onto their website, we know that these are essentially like the rules here, right? We know that there's minimum trading days, trailing threshold, and then maximum position size. We'll go over that. You can trade during news. You cannot get into a trade in one direction and then automatically close it and go to the next. They do not allow that. So if you're that's what multi-directional means. So make sure you're doing that correctly if a news event is coming out. So now when we start to look at these, what are wealth charts? Wealth Charts is a standalone online platform. They do have a lot more advanced options as far as trading goes. So if that's something you're looking for, Wealth Charts might be the way to go for you. I've tried it. I don't like it. I always stick with my Tradeovate. Rhythmic plans. This is something that I used like 4 or 5 years ago. It's old, outdated. That's the feeling I get from it. But if you like it, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Okay, and then Tradeovate. This is what I use. I use Tradeovate for everything. We're gonna be going over a 50K account for the example in this video. And then let's see, contracts. What does this mean? This means that they're giving you access to trade up to 10 full-size contracts or up to 100 micros. So 10 NQ contracts or 100 MNQ contracts. You know that you have to have a profit goal of $3,000 and you have a trailing threshold of $2,500. There is no daily drawdown. The trailing follows you at your highest profit. So you want to be careful with the trailing threshold. And then no license fees or anything like that are ever paid by you. They're all paid by Apex. And then the fee that you see down here. I will be putting the link down in this description for the best possible deal that you guys can get with Apex. They have deals running all the time, so you will never really have to pay this fee. You just have to see what deal is going on at the time of you watching this video. So now that we have that all out of the way, let's go and look at this. So how do we get to this 3K profit target? For me, I do this in one day. And how do I do that in one day? So I come down and I grab my little calculator and I know that, okay, we know that we have to make $3,000. What's the easiest way without over leveraging that's gonna get me there? I'll take my $1,500 because I'm gonna break this up into 2 trades. And I'm gonna say what is the smartest thing without over leveraging would be to use 2 contracts for me. You could go a little bit higher, maybe 3 contracts, but for the purpose of this, let's just say 2 contracts. We know that NQ trades at $20 per point. So whether it moves in your direction or against you, you're gaining or losing $20. So if we're gonna use 2 contracts, we know that's $40. So we can take our $1,500 and we can divide it by 40, and that's going to give us 37 points, almost 38 points. Let's just use today's price action as an example. So 38 points, this was the trade we took live with the team. 38 points would be right here. That was simple to get. How would we run this side? There's 40 points right there. So there was our 2 trades. There's $3,000. We're funded. We're ready to go. We're paying our activation fee. Remember, there's an activation fee that you have to pay. So once we're funded, what now? We have to have a buffer, or as they like to call it, a safety net. And it is over here in right here. Safety net. Okay, for the first 3 payouts. So I didn't include the first 3 payouts. I just kept it as the 6 payouts. So this applies to all your accounts, and then you have to have a minimum of over $500, right, to actually get the payout. So how do we get this? We do the same equation. Take the $2,600 and we could essentially divide it by 2, split it in half, give $1,300. How can you get to $1,300 easy, right? So $1,300, we could do the same equation. We could do 2 contracts divided by $40. We know that we need to get 32 points in 2 trades. Is that doable? Yes, we just looked at that. Okay, so is this something that works for everybody? Absolutely not. So I encourage you to run the numbers, do everything I just did, divide it all out. Think about the number of contracts you want to use. Do you want to do the 1,300 divided by 60, which would be 3 contracts, right? You could say $60. Then you need 21 points. Is that easier for you to get with your strategy, right? Keeping your strategy in mind while you're running these numbers, to think about, okay, on average, I typically, when I trade, get 40 points out of the market. Any trade I take, I get 30 points. I get 20 points, right? Take that into account and see how much you can leverage, but also keep in mind your drawdown. If you're wrong, how many more times can you be wrong with the amount of leverage you're using? So if you're trading 3 contracts and you only have $2,500 in drawdown, how many times can you be wrong, right? How do you figure that out? Say you have $2,500, and then you're dividing that by your position sizing, right? So if you were taking 3 contracts, which would be $60 divided by 60, 41 points. So if you're aiming for 20 points a day, is that enough leverage, right, to lose that much? That's probably, honestly, over leveraging, right? These all need to be taken into account. And what's your stop loss, right? Is your stop loss 20 points? Then you can lose twice. Is your stop loss 10 points? Then you could lose 4 times, right? So thinking about those things while you're doing this is going to set you apart from somebody who's becoming a profitable trader and a non-profitable trader. You have to run all of these numbers for it to make sense. Okay, so say that hypothetically we've gotten funded, we've gotten our buffer. Now where do we go? We know that we have to have 8 trading days. On their website, on the front, it says 7 days here, but on the rules, it's 8 days. So we know that we have to have 8 trading days. There is a $50 minimum for it to count as a trading day, and we know that there's a 30% consistency rule. The 30% consistency rule isn't going to necessarily come into play as of yet, and I'll explain that later as to why. So we know that if we get 6 payouts, then there's no maximum payout cap, right? So 6 payouts at the maximum payout is $12,000. So in a little over 2 months, you could essentially make $12,000. What does that look like, though? How do you get there? What makes sense for that? We know we have to have over $50. We know that we have to have 8 trading days to even get the payout. We know that we have to stay in a consistency rule. How does that look, right? Well, you could take $12,000, would be the 6 payouts of $2,000. That's where that math comes from. So 2,000 times 6, 12,000. And then we know that we have the 48 days, right? So breaking that down and dividing it all, that's giving you $250 a day. Is it easy for you to get $250 a day? What does that look like, right? So if we take our $250, and at this point, we're funded. We want to protect our capital. We want to protect our accounts. We do not want to over leverage. So we're trading 1 contract, right? So divided by $20, that's only 12 points. So getting 12 points, well, let's just say 13, 12 and a half. Let's just say 13 points. we're getting 13 points out of the market each and every single day, rinsing and repeating, right? Doing exactly the same thing, and 12 and a half points, like today's move, even live with the team, like you would have been already done, right? So here's our 13 points right here. 13 points. Is that doable? You break it down like this, absolutely. Is it worth being patient and extremely disciplined and taking that one trade a day so you can have this? Yes. Okay, so now let's go into the second part of this. I have all of this written out. So we don't want that one. We want this one. Okay, so we have our 48 trading days, right? We have $12,000 in profit that we have just made. Now what do? We know that Apex allows us to have 20 accounts. We've rinsed and repeated. We've been extremely disciplined over the last 48 days, gotten to this point where we have around $12,000. Just saying hypothetical, right? So this is with like everything going perfect. Obviously, nothing's perfect with trading, and it does. Some days are just not good days. It's just the reality of it. But for the purpose of the video and kind of breaking these down to see what is possible, we're going to reinvest and then we're going to rinse and repeat. What does that look like? Okay. So depending on the deal, right? And like I said, down below is going to be the best deal always available. It always just updates. So depending on when you're watching the video, you can either get between 50 to 90% off of these Apex accounts. So I'm going to, just for the video, put this at the high end of potentially what they could be, and that being around $90 for a 50K account, and the activation fee being $150. So you're looking at $240 per account. So you have your $12,000 ready to reinvest into those 20 accounts, right? Well, I guess it would be 19 because you already have that one. Yeah, I wrote it out. Okay. So $19 or 19 accounts times $240 per account, $4,600, leaving you with $7,400. Why leaving you with $7,400? Because worst case scenario, you go off the rails and you blow this whole thing up. What could you do? You could buy 19 more for $7,400 with your $7,400, or buy 20 more actually. Okay, so now that we have our 20 accounts, we're going to do the same exact thing we did with one account, right? This is how we're utilizing the prop firm where its fullest extent, right? They're allowing you to have 20 accounts. Why would you not take full advantage of it, right? So we know that we are going to do that same thing, have the $250 a day, but keep in mind, even though that we are doing this, still have to do this. So we have to make our 3K profit target and we have to make our buffer. Okay, we know that we can split this in 2 trades, 3 trades, 4 trades, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it's not a 1-day pass, right? Maybe you're giving yourself an entire week, which is fine. There's no set of rules for the amount of time this is going to require from you to get funded, right? There's nothing saying that you can't take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? But ultimately, the faster you get funded, the more time, you have to work on your 8 days. So that is like the idea of the 1-day pass, doing it in 2 trades for me. That's my psychology behind it. Yours may be different, and that's totally fine. Okay, so now that we have the total of 20 accounts, we're going to talk a little bit about this consistency rule and when I think this comes into play for me personally. I would stick to the $250 a day cap or for my 6 payouts, because when you start to get into the consistency rule, it can get really tricky really quick, because this number, depending on how long you hold a trade, say like using today's price action for instance, say that you got into today's trade and you said, okay, well, I'm just gonna hold this trade because it's just going in my direction, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, other than the idea that, maybe you just made Is that 60 points? Okay. But, and then maybe that it does equate to the $1,500. Now you're going to have to take the consistency rule in because that's your highest profit target, and you're going to have to divide it by that 30%. That means you have to have over $5,000 in your account to be eligible for the payout. So it really is dependent on you and what that looks like for you. In my mind, just going with the idea that I know I can only have a maximum of $2,000, why am I going to shoot myself in the foot, hold these giant trades long term? Like if you wanted to hold onto these accounts for 6 months or longer, would that be beneficial? Sure, right? Because then at that point, there's no maximum payout cap. So I think after the 6 payouts, sure, why not? Because then you've, one, become extremely disciplined, you've gotten your strategy down, and you've gotten money under your belt to where doing something like that and holding over these $250 a day days, like holding over that to get larger profits, that's when I think that comes into play. That's what I said earlier in the video, what we would go over. So that's what makes sense to me. If that doesn't make sense to you, that's totally fine too. But the idea of being able to, and this is why, okay, the idea of being able to take out $40,000 in 8 days is more appealing to me than chasing my consistency rule, right? I don't want to be chasing like, oh my gosh, I just made all this money. That's so amazing. And then me looking at my account and being like, well, you have to make $6,000 more or you're not going to get a payout, right? When in reality, I could have just stuck to my guns and took that 13 point stack, stack, stack. And then in 8 days, I have 40K. Like, it's like, make the math make sense, right? How do you make that make sense? And so that's how I view this. So like I said, if that doesn't make sense to you guys, that no problem, right? But this is just all hypothetical. This is the way I view this. And I think this is an amazing way to utilize this, because if we're doing that same rinse and repeat, we're striving for 48 days of $250, $240,000, right? Like, I think that's foolproof. And I think a lot of people view these accounts in such a odd way. And don't get me wrong, I did as well. I will be the most transparent trader, and I'm trying to bring everything to light with how this looks and how you can like kind of reframe your mindset to be like, oh, I don't have to do like these huge wins that I see like social media people making, right? I don't have to do that. I can go on the market, be in and out and done for the day in 5 minutes, right? So shooting for that $250 a day, that's kind of what this breaks down to, because we're essentially just rinsing and repeating this same thing right here. We're just doing it on a larger scale, trade copying, right? How do we trade copy? Well, inside of Tradeovate, there's an easy way to do this. Can you use an outside trading platform like Trade Syncer? Absolutely. If you wanted to do 20 Apex accounts and then like some other prop firm, right? 5 accounts is something else. Sure, right? You could do the same exact thing. But this is kind of how I view this. So we know that we have the 20 full accounts now. We know that in 8 trading days, we can take out $2,000. So $250 times 20 accounts, that's $40,000 in 8 days. In our 48 days, that's 6 payouts. That's $240,000. And then so I have one little other down here. So now if we think about this in its entirety, right? And this is more thinking long term and not just thinking so short term, and not thinking, the social media gurus, the people who are throwing these large numbers up on the screen and you feeling less than, or that you're not making the right steps in the right direction to get to where you want to be. This is like reframing it to understand that you are indeed making the right steps. You are doing the right thing, because long term, instead of thinking so short term with these accounts, thinking long term, what 5 months can look like. In 5 months, is there any other job that you know of that you could work potentially 5 minutes a day at and make $250,000 in 5 months? No. So take this all into account. If you guys need me to put this all back on the screen, I can. Let's see if we can put it all together. So you guys can relook at this and kind of just go over this and try to understand, how this can make sense for you all together, huh? Well, I tried. There we go. I think this is working yet. So just remembering that it is possible. There are ways to do this, and it doesn't have to be bottom ticking and top ticking an entire move, sitting on the chart all day long, looking for giant moves. It can be as simple as $250 a day, as simple as 13 points a day. So as always, guys, if you have any specific questions, you have a prop firm that you want me to break down that you do not see on my channel, make sure you're dropping it down in the comments, and I'm going to continue to make these videos. There is a bell icon. Once you are subscribed, there is a bell icon so you can see when I drop another video. But this is the basis of how I would do 50K accounts. And, like I said, this could be for somebody who's been in the game for a while or somebody just starting out. But the key to this is knowing your strategy, being extremely disciplined with this, being very consistent and showing up every day and rinsing and repeating that same thing, not letting your emotions get in the way or cloud what you're trying to accomplish here, looking at this more long term. So I will see you guys in the next video.